There comes a time when the silence in your soul becomes louder than the noise around you. A time when words spoken against you do not merely wound your reputation, they attempt to define your worth, rewrite your truth, and bury your integrity under layers of venomous lies. In those hours, it feels as though the voices that rise against you grow stronger with every step you take toward righteousness. And you wonder, how can silence be louder than truth? How can gossip overpower goodness? You hear them. Oh yes, you hear them. Behind closed doors, beneath shallow smiles, under the pretense of friendship or kinship. They speak as though their tongues are swords and their whispers are winds that shape the narrative of your life, not because you did wrong, but because your light, your very existence, offends the darkness they've grown comfortable living in. They speak of you when you are not in the room, and then pretend they never uttered a word. Their lies dress themselves in robes of righteousness, and their accusations come not with proof, but with pride. And if you've ever stood still long enough to feel the sting of being misunderstood, of being wrongfully accused, of having your name traded like currency among the mouths of cowards, then this message is for you. Because you see, there is a truth that surpasses all noise, a justice that does not rely on the courts of men. A God who hears even the words not spoken aloud, who knows the motives behind every sentence, and who watches every tongue that has dared to rise against his chosen ones. You've held your peace while they unleashed their poison. You've walked in silence while they paraded their judgment. But here's what they don't see. The stillness of your soul is not weakness. It is divine restraint. It is the calm before a holy response. And what they forgot or never knew is that the God you serve is not deaf to the defamation, nor is he blind to the betrayal. He does not rush. He lets the noise rise, the accusations echo, the mockery mount, not because he is powerless, but because he is purposeful. The higher the noise, the greater the silence when he strikes. And when he moves, he does not simply correct the lie, he dismantles the liar. Not with violence, not with revenge, but with a justice so perfect it leaves no room for rebuttal. So ask yourself, have you let the noise shake your identity? Have you allowed the slander to sink deeper than it should? Or are you ready to stand, silently if you must, while God silences every tongue that rose against you, not with noise, but with undeniable truth? The winds are shifting, and when God silences, he doesn't just hush the voice, he removes its influence. He renders it powerless. He turns the volume of truth so high that even the echoes of lies vanish in its presence. You were never called to fight every voice. You were called to stand. And now is the moment where your standing will be your strength, and his silence will be their shame. God is not ignorant of the accusations against you. There is a certain kind of pain that no one truly understands unless they have lived through it themselves. The pain of hearing your name twisted, your character distorted, and your intentions maligned by those who have never even cared to know your heart. It is a sorrow that weighs not just on the mind, but settles deep into the soul. You walk through your days carrying invisible wounds, inflicted not by weapons of steel, but by words sharpened by malice. And what makes it even more unbearable is the illusion that you are enduring this storm alone. You look around, and it feels like no one sees the arrows flying toward you. No one seems to hear the whispers behind your back, nor do they feel the ache that gnaws at your spirit with every false accusation. But let me tell you with all the conviction of heaven itself, God has seen it all. Do you really think that the one who formed your heart does not also hear it breaking? Do you believe, even for a fleeting moment, that the God who numbers every hair on your head is unaware of the words spoken to destroy you? He has heard every conversation conducted in secret chambers. He has witnessed every false witness that rose against you. He has seen the nods of agreement in rooms where you were not invited, and he has heard the laughter of those who mock your pain. They think they have succeeded in keeping their schemes hidden, but how can anything be hidden from the one who sees through walls and reads the unspoken intentions of the heart? It is not that God is slow to act. No. It is that his justice is so perfect, so complete, that he allows the wickedness to reveal its full depth before he delivers his answer. He lets the lies multiply, not because he is absent, but because he wants the truth to shine so brightly that no one can deny it when it finally breaks through the clouds of deception. Every word that was ever spoken against you is already known to him. Every insult, every fabricated story, every sneering remark, they are recorded, not forgotten. And while they might believe they have escaped accountability, they are only deceiving themselves, for they have not escaped his gaze. There is something profoundly comforting in knowing that you do not have to carry the burden of proof alone. You do not need to exhaust yourself trying to convince others of your innocence. While your accusers gather in circles to amplify their voices, God listens from his throne, higher than their reach, beyond their manipulations. His ears are not closed to your cries, and his eyes are not blind to your tears. He counts them, he treasures them, and he prepares to answer them in a way that will leave no doubt about his awareness of your suffering. So when you feel isolated, when you feel as though no one stands beside you, remember this: you have the attention of heaven, and that attention is not passive, it is active, alert, and fully engaged in your story. Every careless word spoken against you has already been weighed in his scales. And though he waits, he does not forget. Though he allows the storm to rage, he does not abandon you to it. He watches, he remembers, and in his perfect timing he responds. There is no accusation so hidden that he has not seen it. There is no betrayal so quiet that he has not heard it. And when he chooses to act, every tongue that dared to rise against you will fall silent in the shadow of his justice. Your silence has been a spiritual weapon, not a weakness. There were moments, perhaps too many to count, when you stood on the edge of your own defense, moments when every fiber of your being screamed for you to speak up, to retaliate, to shout your truth from the mountaintops so the whole world would hear. And yet something deeper, something wiser, something divine held you back. You felt it like a quiet hand resting on your heart, restraining you from using your voice to battle those who sought to drown you in their noise. And at times, that restraint felt unbearable. It felt like weakness, like surrender, like letting them win. But oh, how wrong that perception is. What you mistook for weakness was, in fact, one of the mightiest weapons in your spiritual arsenal, the power of silence. Silence, to the ordinary eye, appears as defeat. It looks like you have no answer, no defense, no strength left to fight. But in the eyes of God, your silence was a testament of trust. It was the visible proof of your faith that He, and He alone, is your defender. Each time you chose silence over retaliation, you were not surrendering to your accusers, you were surrendering to your protector. You were placing your confidence not in human words, but in divine justice. And let me tell you, there is no stronger position than to be still and let God fight on your behalf. Your silence has been a shield, not a shackle. It has been a fortress, built not of stone, but of spiritual conviction. While they mistook your quiet for weakness, heaven recognized it as a cry of trust that thundered louder than any spoken word. The patience you displayed was not born from fear, but from deep, unshakable faith. You knew, even in your most fragile moments, that human defense is limited, but divine defense is limitless. And so you held your peace. With every passing day that you remained silent, your enemies thought they were gaining ground. They mistook your patience for permission, your restraint for defeat. But they failed to understand that you were not standing empty-handed. You were armed with the most powerful weapon of all, the favor of God, drawn closer with every silent tear, every unspoken prayer, every quiet surrender. They raised their voices, but you raised your spirit. They gathered their allies, but you gathered your courage. They thought they had cornered you, yet all the while they were unknowingly walking into the justice of God, where He would render them powerless before the strength of your silent endurance. Silence in the hands of the faithful is not absence of power, it is the preservation of it. It is the steady, unwavering trust that says, I do not need to respond, because my God responds for me. It is the refusal to descend to their level, the strength to resist the temptation of bitter rebuttal, and the wisdom to know that the greatest vindication comes not from our voices, but from His. And while they spoke, your silence built a foundation beneath your feet, a foundation of faith that they could neither shake nor destroy. And when God moves, He moves on foundations like these. So let them misread your quiet, let them underestimate your stillness. For in the silence, heaven is crafting a response that will echo far beyond their words, and your silence will soon speak louder than every tongue that rose against you. The truth needs no defense when God decides to speak. There is something deeply painful about living beneath the weight of falsehoods. When lies circulate about you, they carry a venom that spreads quietly, often beyond your reach to correct. People who once trusted your name now question it. Faces that once greeted you with warmth turn cold, all because of twisted narratives that were never yours to begin with. And in these moments, it feels natural to want to defend yourself, to chase after every lie, to straighten every crooked story. But have you ever paused and wondered, what if chasing the lies only pulls you further away from the truth that God Himself is preparing to reveal? The truth does not panic when it is buried. It does not fight to be seen. It does not wrestle to be heard over the roar of deception. The truth, when it rests in the hands of God, is like a fire beneath the surface. It may seem hidden for a time, but it is always burning, always alive, always waiting for the breath of God to fan it into an undeniable flame. The liars may dance around their fires of falsehood, but their flames die out quickly. What remains is the fire of truth, kindled by heaven itself. It is not your job to spend your life chasing down every false accusation. It is not your calling to exhaust yourself proving your worth to those eager to believe the worst about you. God does not require your assistance to reveal the truth. He asks only for your trust, while He prepares the moment when truth will not merely be spoken, it will be unveiled in a way that no man can deny. When He decides to speak, it will not be a quiet whisper lost among the clamor of slander. It will be a thunderous declaration, one that silences every tongue that dared to accuse you. There is a beauty in trusting God with your defense. It frees your heart from the exhausting need to justify yourself. It lifts the unbearable burden of carrying every false word on your shoulders. While others are busy weaving their webs of deceit, you can rest in the certainty that God is untangling every knot they create, and His timing is perfect. He waits until the liars have fully exposed their intentions, until they are so entangled in their own falsehoods that they cannot escape, and then He releases the truth like a flood. When God decides to speak, He does not simply correct the record, He transforms the narrative. He elevates you beyond the reach of your accusers and forces even the most hardened hearts to acknowledge what they once denied. The truth, when it arrives on God's breath, carries a power no slander can withstand. It does not need defenders, because it has the defender of all things behind it. And when truth shines, it exposes every shadow of deceit, leaving your enemies blinking in the brightness of their own shame. So, If you have felt weary from the weight of lies, if you have felt your soul bending beneath the strain of defending your name, know this: your silence has not been in vain, and your restraint has not gone unnoticed. God is not only aware of the truth, He is the author of it, and when He chooses to bring it forth, it will rise with a force that no accusation can bury, no enemy can deny, and no slanderer can overcome. Those who mock you will one day mourn the opportunity they misused. There is a unique cruelty in being mocked by those you once trusted. It is a sting that cuts deeper than mere insult because it is sharpened by familiarity. They laughed at your setbacks, sneered at your silent endurance, and twisted your struggles into their entertainment. To them, your hardship was a spectacle, your silence an admission of defeat. And as they reveled in their mockery, they never paused to consider the weight of the opportunity they were squandering, the opportunity to stand beside you rather than against you. What they failed to see in their rush to ridicule was that life is not static. Circumstances do not remain forever as they are. God, in His wisdom, allows seasons of struggle not as a sign of abandonment, but as preparation for elevation. And those who mocked you in your valley forgot that valleys are not permanent. They are merely the path to higher ground. But in their arrogance, they chose to laugh rather than to support, to scorn rather than to encourage, to belittle rather than to bless. Their mockery was not a reflection of your worth, but a revelation of their character. They exposed their smallness by choosing to diminish you, revealing hearts that were threatened by your potential. They thought your low season would be eternal, that their laughter would echo indefinitely. Yet they overlooked the reality that God watches not only your tears but also their taunts. He marks every word they speak in mockery and holds them accountable for the opportunities they misused. Imagine the weight of regret that will fall upon them when they see you rise. Picture their faces when the one they ridiculed is raised by the hand of God and placed in a position of honor. The laughter they once enjoyed will turn to silence, and that silence will be deafening. They will mourn not because you have risen, but because they realize too late that they squandered the chance to walk beside you, to witness your ascent with humility and grace. They mocked your process, not understanding it was God's method of refining you. They saw your struggle as a sign of failure, not realizing it was a season of preparation. But there will come a moment, and it always comes, when the scales tip, and the one who was laughed at becomes the one who is admired. Not because you sought revenge, not because you orchestrated your own rise, but because God Himself chose to lift you in the sight of those who tried to bury you with their words. The irony is sharp and undeniable. The very ones who scoffed at your pain will one day ache with the weight of their own remorse. Their mockery will haunt them not because you wish it, but because God's justice is complete. He turns their laughter into lessons they cannot ignore. He allows them to see what they mocked you for was the very path He designed to elevate you beyond their reach. Their regret will not be a fleeting feeling, but a heavy, lingering burden. They will carry it silently and bitterly, knowing they had a choice, and they chose to mock. They had a moment to show compassion, but they opted for cruelty. And now, as God lifts you higher, they are left behind, mourning not only their mockery, but their missed opportunity to witness your rise with honor rather than shame. God's vindication is public. Because their accusation was public, there is a profound weight that settles on the heart when you realize your name has been dragged through the mud in the open streets of gossip, not whispered privately, not contained within closed walls, but flung wide into the public square for all to see and hear. It is one thing to endure quiet misunderstandings. It is another to bear the crushing burden of public accusation, where voices rise together not in pursuit of truth, but in the reckless chorus of condemnation. They do not care if you bleed silently beneath the weight of their words. In fact, it seems as though your quiet suffering fuels their fire, convincing them you are weak, powerless, defeated. But what they fail to understand, what they will soon be forced to witness, is that God does not overlook the public humiliation of His beloved, and because they sought to shame you openly, God will vindicate you openly. There is a law written in the heart of divine justice. The level of exposure used to harm the innocent determines the level of exposure God uses to restore them. They tried to bury your reputation beneath a mountain of lies, but God was already preparing to lift you above that very mountain, not in private, not in the shadows, but in full view of every eye that once looked down upon you. When He moves to vindicate, He does so in a way that commands attention, not for your glory, but for His. Not to boast in your triumph, but to display the undeniable justice of heaven. Think deeply about this. Every time they gathered to discuss you, every moment they spent weaving their narratives and crafting their accusations, they believed they were writing the final chapter of your story. They believed they held the pen, and they believed their words were sealing your fate. Yet they never considered that God was the true author of your life, and His pen had not even begun to write the pages of your redemption. What they intended as the closing argument of your downfall will be remembered as the preface to your divine vindication, and when God vindicates, He does not whisper it into obscurity. He does not conceal it in quiet corners where only a few witnesses can attest to it. No, He places it upon a platform so elevated that all who doubted, all who ridiculed, and all who falsely accused are compelled to see it with their own eyes. He forces them to confront the evidence of His justice, not as spectators from afar, but as unwilling witnesses to the very triumph they declared impossible. Have you ever wondered why God allows the accusations to spread so far? Why He permits your name to be sullied before so many ears? It is because He intends for His vindication to reach even further. The reach of your shame will be nothing compared to the reach of your restoration. Where their voices once carried tales of your supposed failure, your vindication will carry the undeniable truth of your resilience, your endurance, and most of all, God's favor upon your life. They thought they were building a stage to expose your faults, but unknowingly they built the stage upon which God will display His masterpiece. Every stone they cast at your reputation has become a stone in the foundation of the platform God is constructing for your public restoration. And when the curtains are pulled back, it will not be the scene they anticipated. It will be the scene God has orchestrated. One where you stand tall, clothed not in the garments of shame, but in robes of honor, woven by the hands of divine justice. There is a holy satisfaction in knowing that the same mouths that spoke against you will have no choice but to fall silent. Not because you silenced them, but because God's work in your life will leave them speechless. The magnitude of His vindication will be so profound, so undeniable, that even your fiercest accusers will be reduced to hushed astonishment. They will have no words left, for the evidence of His intervention will speak louder than their accusations ever could. And consider this, it is not only your accusers who will witness this great unveiling, it will also be those who watched in silence, those who doubted quietly, those who wondered if perhaps the accusations held truth. They too will see the hand of God lifting you, and they will be moved not merely to admiration but to awe. They will recognize that this restoration was not man-made, not self-earned, but heaven-sent. There is a reason God waited. There is a reason He allowed the accusations to be so public. Because when He moves, He desires to leave no corner untouched, no heart unaware, no eye blind to His justice. He ensures that His vindication rings louder than any lie, and its echoes travel further than any gossip. When God vindicates you publicly, He is not simply restoring your reputation. He is rewriting the entire narrative, turning what was meant for your destruction into a testimony so powerful it cannot be silenced or ignored. He will strip power from the tongues that spoke against you. There is a cruel kind of confidence that grows in the hearts of those who believe they can speak evil and face no consequence. It begins as a whisper, cautious and calculated, testing the boundaries of how far they can go. But when they see no immediate response, when they believe they have gone unnoticed, they grow bolder. What starts as secret conversations behind closed doors turns into open defamation as they assume their words hold power and they treat your silence as permission. It feeds their pride, fuels their arrogance, and they begin to believe that their voices can shape your destiny. But what they do not understand, what they will soon come to fear, is that the power they believe they possess is an illusion, a fragile thread that God Himself is preparing to snap. They used their tongues like weapons, slicing through your name with reckless delight. They thought their influence was unshakable, that their words would echo endlessly in the ears of others, staining your reputation beyond repair. They reveled in the attention, in the twisted satisfaction of dragging your character through the mud. Every word they spoke was an attempt to chain you to their narrative, to bind you in a prison of falsehoods where they held the keys. But there is a truth they ignored. No one holds authority over your life except the one who breathed life into your soul. The tongues that rose against you, bold and unashamed, were never as powerful as they appeared. Their strength did not come from truth but from deception, and deception is always temporary. It thrives in the shadows, in the absence of light. But the moment truth breaks through, its power withers like a plant deprived of sun and water. God, in His perfect wisdom, allows them to speak, not because He is powerless to stop them, but because He is preparing to expose the emptiness of their words by stripping away the influence they thought they had. They stood tall for a season, their voices loud, their lies convincing to many, but what they failed to grasp is that God's justice moves with precision, not haste. He watches them build their towers of arrogance, brick by brick, lie by lie, knowing that the higher they climb, the greater their fall will be when He removes their foundation. When God decides to act, He does not merely silence their voices. He dismantles their platform. He ensures that the ears once eager to hear their words will turn away in disgust, that the influence they once wielded will crumble into dust beneath their feet. There is a profound justice in seeing the power of your accusers dissolve before your eyes. It is not about vengeance. It is about witnessing the righteousness of God in action, watching as He reclaims what they tried to steal from you. They sought to define your story with their words, but they will come to see that only God holds the pen. And when He writes, their voices are reduced to meaningless noise, barely a whisper against the thunder of His truth. Their audience will scatter. Those who once lent them their ears will come to realize the poison in their words and withdraw, leaving them isolated and unheard. Imagine the weight of that silence, the unbearable void where once there was influence and power. They will speak, but no one will listen. They will try to revive their narratives, but no one will care. Their tongues once sharp and swift will falter, their confidence evaporating like mist beneath the rising sun of God's justice. It is a humbling and terrifying thing to be abandoned by the very influence you trusted. And that is the fate awaiting those who have built their lives upon the ruin of others. God does not allow their power to remain unchecked forever. In His time, He removes the mask, reveals the rot beneath their polished words, and leaves them to face the reality of their actions. And what a bitter reality it will be to see their voices lose their grip, to feel their words fall flat, to experience the loneliness that comes when influence evaporates like water in the desert. They will try to speak louder, to shout over the rising truth, but their efforts will be in vain. The more they strive to regain what God has stripped away, the clearer it becomes to all that they were never truly powerful. They were merely permitted to speak for a time. Their season of influence was never a sign of divine approval. It was merely the rope by which they have now entangled themselves. And as they stand in the ruins of their crumbling power, they will be forced to face a truth they cannot escape. The power of their tongues was never their own. It belonged to God, and He has reclaimed it. God will use the lies spoken against you to lift you higher. There is a mysterious and almost painful beauty in how God works through the very things that were meant to destroy you. When you were at your lowest, drowning beneath the weight of cruel words and false accusations, it felt as though each lie tightened the noose around your hope. Their words were not casual comments thrown into the air. They were crafted with precision, designed to wound you where you felt most vulnerable. They spread like wildfire, devouring your reputation, turning friends into strangers, and leaving you standing amidst the ashes of what you thought was your secure life. But while they rejoiced over the ruins, they never realized that the God you trust was already breathing life beneath the ashes, preparing to raise you from the very place they tried to bury you. They believed that the lies would define you, that people would see you through the distorted lens they created. They believed that if they could spread their version of your story wide enough, you would never escape it. But what they did not understand is that every lie spoken against you became raw material in the hands of God. Material He would use to build a platform for your elevation. Every time they slandered you, they unknowingly added another layer to the foundation of the testimony God was constructing for your life. The mockery, the false narratives, the poisonous conversations behind your back, these were not wasted moments in God's eyes. He was watching, not passively, but with purpose. With each lie, He was preparing to demonstrate a truth far more powerful, and not just to you, but to all who had heard the lies and all who had doubted your path. God has a way of making your enemies the audience for your elevation. He takes the very stories they spread to pull you down and uses them as the backdrop against which He will display His faithfulness in lifting you higher. There is something profoundly humbling and yet deeply satisfying in knowing that the very words meant to destroy you will become the proof of your rising. Because when God lifts you, people will not only see your success, they will remember the lies, they will remember the stories told about you, the rumors that were whispered in the dark. And seeing you elevated despite it all will strike their hearts with the undeniable truth that no lie can prevent God's purpose from being fulfilled. Think of how they gathered, confidently predicting your downfall. They spoke as if they controlled your destiny, as if their tongues could shape your future. But they overlooked the one who holds all authority. They underestimated the God who turns betrayals into blessings, slander into strength, and defamation into destiny. Every false word they spoke has been caught in the net of divine justice, and is now being repurposed as a stepping stone beneath your feet. Their lies attempted to build a wall to block your path, but God is turning that wall into a bridge to carry you over their schemes. What they meant to limit you will, in the hands of the Almighty, launch you into a season of favor they cannot stop, interrupt, or reverse. And the more they lied, the higher your platform grew. Without even knowing it, they became laborers in your divine promotion, working tirelessly to craft the very situation God would use to elevate you beyond their reach. What they failed to understand is that you were never fighting for your reputation. You were trusting God with it, and while they rushed to spread their venom, you quietly held your ground, allowing God to be the architect of your defense. And this is the moment where His design begins to unfold. The lies, once sharp weapons aimed at your heart, are being reshaped into testimonies that will point to His power in your life. Their efforts were never wasted, but not in the way they hoped. They wanted to see you fall, but all their work only ensured that when you rise, your elevation will be undeniable, unforgettable, and unstoppable. And they will have no choice but to watch, to witness the very narrative they crafted crumble beneath the weight of God's truth. The higher He lifts you, the clearer it becomes that no amount of deception can stand against His purpose. Now, as you look back on every wound inflicted by words, every shadow cast over your character, and every whisper that sought to weaken your spirit, I want you to see it with new eyes, not as chains that bound you, but as threads in a tapestry only heaven could weave. Every accusation, every mockery, every lie spoken against your name, they were not interruptions to your destiny. They were instruments placed into the hands of the Almighty, and in His wisdom, He has played them into a symphony of justice that will echo far beyond the noise of your enemies. You must understand this deeply. Let it settle in your soul. God was never absent in your silence. He was not indifferent as the storms of slander raged against you. He watched with perfect patience, allowing every tongue to rise just high enough so that His justice would be seen in its full glory when He struck them down. The silence you endured was not emptiness. It was the quiet forging of divine preparation. It was God's way of gathering the evidence of their cruelty, letting it accumulate until there could be no denial of their guilt, and no mistaking His hand when He moves to defend you. The voices that once seemed louder than your prayers will soon be drowned by the thunder of His justice. Those who paraded their lies with arrogance will stand silenced, their words falling to the ground, powerless in the face of undeniable truth. And you will not rise from this battle carrying the stench of bitterness or the weight of revenge. You will rise, crowned in dignity, clothed in the favor of God, and lifted by a justice so complete that no enemy can contest it. Let them remember the lies they told. Let them recall every twisted narrative they shared, for soon those memories will haunt them more than they ever imagined. Their mouths, once filled with bold accusations, will taste the dust of their own defeat, and your name, once dragged through the mud by their hands, will be raised high by the hands of God Himself. He will restore your honor in such a way that even your enemies will marvel, not at you alone, but at the undeniable power of the God who fought for you while you stood in silence. Never forget, it was never your voice that needed to be the loudest. It was your faith that needed to be the strongest. While they relied on noise, you relied on the Almighty. While they trusted in their influence, you trusted in the one who holds the final word. And now, His word is being written over your life, louder and clearer than any slander that once threatened to define you. The chapter is turning, the page is flipping, and where once there were lies, now there will be legacy. Where once there was mockery, now there will be majesty. Where once there was accusation, now there will be affirmation, not by man, but by God. You are not rising alone. You are rising with the full weight of heaven beneath your feet, and every tongue that rose against you will fall silent in the presence of His victory. Stand tall, walk forward. Let the dust of their words fall away from your shoulders. God has declared it. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment, He will condemn. You have not been forgotten. You have not been overlooked. You have been divinely positioned for a vindication so powerful, so public, and so complete that it will not only lift you, it will glorify the one who never lets you fall.